Lake Mansfield Road paving, recommendation from the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force. Mark?
Can everyone hear me all right? I just want to give a quick update, a little background on our recommendation. You'll notice in the board packets there's a recommendation from staff to pave 900 feet of roadway along the shores of Lake Mansfield. On July 22nd, staff presented a recommendation to the select board for the first time to pave that 900 feet of roadway. While the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force and staff work together to secure funding, to work our way through permitting, and to complete design work. Staff is once again recommending the same course of action for the following reasons. One, there's currently no funding in place at this time for this project. Two, the mission of the Lake Mansfield Task Force is to develop a comprehensive Lake Mansfield improvement plan. Staff, on the other hand, is looking at this from a broader perspective. So we took into consideration a few factors. First of all, Cottage Street Bridge has been closed for some time. We were here last Monday listening to residents in that neighborhood who are, some of which are upset about that closure. The Division Street Bridge was recently closed. West Sheffield Road, you may or may not know at this time, I don't think we've mentioned this publicly yet, but that road will become one lane very shortly. The bank is starting to collapse. It may ultimately be closed. There's also no detour and no turnaround plan in place at this time for the closure of Lake Mansfield Road, and those are conversations that we've yet to have. Lastly, our best guess at this point is that this project would be a 2 to 3 year process to complete. And in summary, while we respect the views of the Lake Mansfield Task Force, closing the road at this time seems premature in the staff's opinion. We would suggest that it remain open after a thick coat of asphalt is applied in the coming weeks and defer an official closing date to another time.
I disagree.
State your name.
Mike McGuire, and I live at 115 Hollenbeck Avenue, and I'm not a member of the Lake Mansfield Task Force. And if you'll forgive me, I'll read this so I can get through my points as quickly as possible. I support the closure of Lake Mansfield Road for all the reasons stated in the task force report and that were voiced by the 4 members of the select board when they voted to implement the task force recommendations and close the road to non-emergency traffic. Referring to the executive summary of your report, recommending the repaving of the road and apparently keeping it open to two-way traffic for another 3 years. While I don't know you personally, I have nothing but respect for Sean and Chris, so I'm certainly that you guys have more to say about this than you said in the executive summary. So I'm just reacting to the points that you made in the executive summary. Only being able to read that, I don't think that the 3 reasons stated provide a reasonable rationale for the select board implementing their recommendation for the following reasons. Number 1, currently no plan for detouring vehicles around Lake Mansfield Road. Doesn't seem especially complex. It's not a new issue, and it's not going to be any different in 3 years. From the north, you continue down Division Street, you turn left on Alfred Road, and vice versa. Otherwise, you just go through town on Route 7. This rerouting of traffic in return for the health of the lake, increased recreational opportunities, safety, etc., is the trade-off that the select board voted for when they voted to close the road. As I understand it, grant funds are starting to come in, as with the design grant for the parking lot. Closing the road now would show that the town is serious about this project and would likely be a positive for securing grant funding. What message does repaving the road so it'll continue to fall into the lake send? Second point, it's difficult to see how the closing of the Division Street Bridge has anything to do with Lake Mansfield Road. The 2 closures are on opposite sides of Route 41, and I can't see any alternate route that would go from, that would get you around. I can't see any alternate route that would avoid Division Street Bridge that even comes close to Lake Mansfield Road. Third, the narrowly worded point about the draft of the task force minutes not raising environmental concerns seems almost disingenuous. The whole point of stabilizing the lake shore and eliminating the vehicular traffic is to improve the environment and health of the lake. So I think that following this recommendation and going ahead with the temporary repaving of the road would result in the road continuing to fall into the lake and two-way traffic driving even faster on the road than it is now for another 3 years, which is exactly the opposite effect of the task force recommendations and the way forward that was voted by the select board. So I urge the board to direct the staff to come up with an alternate proposal that isn't a huge step backward for the plan that's already been approved.
Exactly, pretty much.
Christina?
Good evening, I'm Christine Ward and I live at 29 Castle Hill Avenue and I do serve on the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force. And I too would like to read my letter to the select board and I'd be happy to use the microphone.
Oh, behind you. Okay.
Just push the button in and hold it for a second.
Thank you. And thank you for your attention. Upon discovering the letter from the town manager and staff to the select board in the select board packet, I proposed and wrote this letter and provided it to the select board. Dear members of the select board, at our meeting on September 10th, the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force voted unanimously to recommend against the repaving of Lake Mansfield Road, and that the section of the road from the boat launch north to just south of 30 Lake Mansfield Road be closed to vehicular traffic as of November 15th, 2019. We asked Mr. Rembo to communicate this recommendation to the select board. On Friday, September 20th, the task force received draft minutes of our September 10th meeting from Mr. Rembo, and on the same day we were informed via email that discussion of our recommendation would be held at the upcoming September 23rd meeting, which of course is this evening. Task force members were not provided with the September 20th executive summary received in your meeting packet, nor made aware of the decision of the staff to recommend against the task force recommendation. My hope is that this miscommunication was an oversight, rather than intentional. In the 12 years of the task force existence, we have always enjoyed an open, constructive, and collaborative relationship with our hardworking town staff. That relationship has been essential in the work and steady progress that we have accomplished. As there is not time for the task force to meet since the executive summary was written, please understand that the following clarification comes specifically from me, not on behalf of the entire task force. In response to number one, the next stage of securing funding for the long-term planning for Lake Mansfield Road is well supported by two very extensive improvement plans and a detailed engineering study, and should be accomplished in a timely fashion. Currently, we have received a Mass DEP 604B grant for the design of the Lake Mansfield parking lot, a key element in improvement plan implementation. The select board's decision to close a portion of Lake Mansfield Road to vehicular traffic was integral to proceeding with this planning process. In the past, the town has seen complete success in seeing 604B planning projects being funded by a related Mass DEP construction grant, for example at Castle Hill Road and also at Knob Hill Road. And I think we can have confidence in this process in the future. In addition, the task force asked the town planner to seek funding in the upcoming round of CPA call for proposals to support the design of Lakeside Rehabilitation Project, including the creation of a recreational trail to replace the closed portion of road. The area of concern is within the town right-of-way, and the improvement strategy is clearly supported by the town's master plan and open space planning goals, making it an excellent fit for CPA funding. The change from road to trail greatly strengthens its potential for next stages of DEP funding and mass recreational trail funding. While we are looking At a multi-year project, our work is extremely well supported by conscientious planning and detailed engineering work that has already been accomplished. So I would expect that we can move efficiently towards completion. In the interim, I have confidence in the ability of the town DPW superintendent to provide the signage and the structures and the community outreach needed to communicate the safe change of traffic flow in this area. In response to number 2, I am quite unclear as to how the functioning of emergency providers is impeded by the closure of Division Street in relation to the closure of Lake Mansfield Road. Have town officials received specific information from our emergency service providers? Can we hear the specifics? This concern was never discussed with the task force. Emergency service access has always been foremost in our considerations. We have consistently communicated with the emergency service providers as an integral part of our improvement plan that the closure of Division Street is a rationale for the repaving does not seem to me to be clearly demonstrated. In response to number 3, the health of Lake Mansfield has consistently been the guiding priority for all improvement planning recommendations, and I am extremely uncomfortable with a statement within the memorandum that no environmental concerns were expressed at the September 10th task force meeting to justify this closure. In fact, the impact of the road as detrimental to the health of the lake has been thoroughly discussed at task force meetings, public meetings, and select board meetings. And I am confident that this priority is what led to the select board's vote in favor of the partial closure of Lake Mansfield Road to vehicular traffic. To imply that the environmental issues are not at the heart of our reasoning behind the recommendation against repaving takes our work out of context and is thoroughly misleading. To be clear, the current road conditions are detrimental to the lake health. Pavement is falling into the lake. Seasonal icing requires a heavy use of road salt in the resource area. Annual cycles of freezing and thawing are causing the cracking of the road surface and the deterioration of the lake buffer zone. In response to these conditions, many community members are already using alternative travel routes to avoid the rough conditions on Lake Mansfield Road. Closing the designated section of the road to vehicular traffic will help to significantly slow road deterioration and eliminate the need for salt and sand. And interim improvements can be made to the section of Lake Mansfield Road to allow for continued recreation use and access for walking and jogging and biking and fishing. Repaving is a costly solution that moves us away from our agreed upon goal. Why would we pave a road we intend to close? And why would we encourage the traffic patterns that we intend to change? And why would we invest $50,000 in pavement that we will only need to remove? The repaving of Lake Mansfield Road would be a grave step backwards for Lake Mansfield improvements. The health of Lake Mansfield and the benefits of this resource area provides our community now and in the future is at stake. And I urge the Select Board to be confident in their previous decision to close this portion of Lake Mansfield Road to cars and to move forward this year, at this moment, at this meeting, to support the task force in improving and moving towards the improvement plan and to vote against repaving this section of Lake Mansfield Road. I thank you.
Railroad Street. I have a question and then some more follow-on comments. Have all of the members of the Select Board read the complete report from the Lake Mansfield Task Force? Yes, okay. So then what I'm going to share with you should not be new news if you've read it and understood what it said. I think that for some reason you've been misled. Repaving this road, according to the engineers, will last the way that it's been suggested by the staff in town, will last from 5 to 7 years, potentially more, and would prevent the roadway from collapsing into the lake. Somewhere along the way, Lake Mansfield Task Force decided to tell you guys that it was 3 to 5 years, maybe less. And so they've gone against their own extensive engineering studies that they've been quoting. They have done 3 surveys, as I mentioned in the citizen speak time at the last select board meeting that I attended, that were 90 people, 134 people, and 220 people. And each of those 3 times, about 70% of the people that responded said that they wanted the road open, at least in some form or fashion, and not closed. In that, what I didn't share was that the task force decided not to include having a boardwalk as an option in those surveys because they didn't want to confuse people. I happen to think that the people of this town are smart enough to not be confused by having an additional option. The other thing is that they have also basically decided against the whole boardwalk idea based on the supposed cost because of the environmental impact, the permitting, and all the various things. However, what I found is that they did not decide or even look at the potential of using a product such as Technopost and using it from the beach area down to the boat launch. These Technoposts can be put in with minimal environmental impact. They can go in the wintertime. They can be driven in on top of ice. The only environmental impact becomes a poof of dust underneath the ice. It's a relatively low-cost option. Combined with the $50,000 to lay down a thick layer of pavement, the bank can also be built up and maintain the lake environment. In fact, if this option is utilized and the bank gets enhanced, we can actually increase the biodiversity and the ecosystem of the lake. If you don't believe that, take a look at some of the Mass websites and all the coastal waterways and all the things that they've done by using raised platforms and raised boardwalks. This is not rocket science. It's easy to see. It doesn't have to be as expensive. It's not all about, hey, we can get the money from the state or we're going to have to pay it ourselves. If we're talking about the environmental health of the lake, putting a boardwalk across there that gets done with proper techniques is not environmentally damaging. In fact, it enhances the environment. It allows us to maintain a pathway, a walkway, and two-way traffic. It meets all of the needs of all of the people in the community at a lower cost than what's being proposed.
Thank you.
Hello, Peter Frank, 16 Lakeview Road. I would just say that through the history of this road, that there have been many, many patches, many, many fixes. None of them have provided any long-term solution to the road. The problem with the road is that the underlying foundation sub-base of the road is unsound. Therefore, adding more material is just going to continue the mistakes and the poor workmanship that has landed the road in the condition that it is now. Because of freeze-thaw and because of runoff, all the asphalt will not adhere to the foundation. There is no foundation to the road. It's crazy to think that all of a sudden dumping a bunch of asphalt on top of an unsound foundation is going to help the situation. It's just going to continue to fall into the lake. So why that this task, the select board made the hugely commendable and bold move of going with a recreation area for the lake, which I want to reiterate is the only use that makes sense for the long term there is only one Lake Mansfield. We've got roads going everywhere. There's only one Lake Mansfield, which doesn't look like it's all that healthy to me. You go walking through there, the road is collapsing into it. There are weeds coming out. The weeds are overgrowing that lake. That lake is not healthy. And to think that, you know, pouring a bunch of asphalt in there makes any sense environmentally, it's ludicrous. You might as well just close the lake, fill it in, you know, with sand and drive over the top. That's a little bit carried away. But it just makes, it really makes no sense environmentally. And I guess what really bothered me about this whole discussion from the very beginning, aside from the bold move of the select board in terms of closing it, is this idea of convenience, you know? Like, the neighbors are gonna be inconvenienced because they have to, you know, drive an extra 5 minutes in their car. Well, I don't think that's such a big inconvenience. That's why we burn fossil fuels, is so that people can drive, around the lake. What I've seen on that lake are, you know, families trying to ride their bicycles and, you know, trucks trying to pass by them. It just, the whole thing doesn't make sense. And I feel like the argument of convenience is so self-centered and so much indicative of the problem that, you know, we face in the world throughout the environment, of environmental destruction based on convenience. And why can't we just take a stand on, you know, just this little section of roadway, which is totally unique in this town? There's nothing else like it. And really, the argument of convenience also completely falls apart because, you know, if with the Division Street Road closed, right? So you drive across Lake Mansfield Road. Where do you go? You can't go out to Route 7. You can go, yeah, you can maybe take like, you know, Route 41 up to West Stockbridge or something, but there's no place to go. It makes no sense. I feel like the argument that the bridge is closed is in some way an argument for keeping Lake Mansfield Road open it makes no sense. Thank you.
I didn't come prepared to speak on this subject tonight, but after listening to the discussion, I just want to briefly voice a viewpoint of someone who's a resident and who really appreciates being able to take a shortcut across Lake Mansfield Road. But I appreciate Lake Mansfield more than being able to take that shortcut. And I was kind of inspired by our Native American speaker tonight. He was giving an indigenous viewpoint. He was speaking in terms that we don't usually speak in or think in. But the Native Americans had a way of guiding their policies that maybe would be useful for our town officials. And that is to think of the impact of every decision, every policy up to the 7th generation. So what are we leaving our children? Another road or a beautiful lake that they can use for swimming and for other recreation and for walking and biking? So I ask you to take your viewpoint, not only all the engineering studies and all that, yes, that's important, but think about the 7th generation and what we're leaving to our children. Thank you.
Good evening, Dale Abrams, 6 Lake Mansfield Road, and a member of the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force. I've been a part of that task force for roughly 10 years, and it's been an incredible process to work with both select board members and town staff members and community members to think about what's right for the lake. All through that process, we've considered deeply all the implications from transportation to accessibility to environmental impacts and to recreational opportunities. So nothing that we've done in the last few months has been a quick decision. It's been a slow and deliberative process. I hope that we will take this opportunity to think deeply and not short term, and know that making the decision now to not pave the road and making the decision now to close that portion is the right step towards the long goal that we've set of creating an incredible and protected, environmentally sensitive resource that will be a recreation area as it is now that folks from all around come to enjoy. I hope you'll make the right step tonight and vote not to pave the road in the short term. Thank you. I also wanted to add and ask that the letter from Brandy Nelson, who's a member of the task force, be read into the record.
We will do that, but let's get through.
Dave Ryle, Christian Hill Road. Here we are again. We already know that the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force will restrict access to health care, reduce ambulance response times, increase traffic on Main Street and Christian Hill Road. For those that say that the Division Street Bridge will have no impact on this, they're wrong. The traffic counts from the Mass DOT indicate there's at least 2,000 cars traveling from Route 71 over the hill tributary roads like Hurlburt and coming this way every day. Actually, the number's 4,000, so I'm assuming 2,000 coming this way. Anything that we can do in order to diffuse that traffic between Lake Mansfield Road, Division Road, instead of forcing it all down Christian Hill Road, because that's where they're going to go, or Route 41, right into the center of Main Street, is what we ought to do. We shouldn't make a short-term decision here that's going to exacerbate the traffic problem in this town. You asked earlier, why are the commercial values in this town going down? And that's because nobody can get in this town and it's impossible to do business. I'm a businessman. There's no way I would open up a business in this town. No way. Everybody that I know is avoiding the downtown like the plague because they don't want to go through the traffic jam. That, last Friday, was backed up to WSBS at 11:30 in the morning. Okay. So, Monday morning at 9:30, no collision, it's still backed up to Belcher Square every single day. Come on, we need to do something in order to make things better for business. But, I digress. Okay, the overall, okay. The Lake Mansfield Task Force Plan will also restrict access to the lake and reduce the overall number of people who will be able to enjoy the lake every year. Currently, you have 550 cars on that road, assuming 2 people per car. That's 1,100 people that get to enjoy that lake every day driving by. That equates to 400,000 people per year. Who's to say that we can only enjoy that lake by walking or biking or fishing? Okay? Considering that that means I drive that road a few times a week, and there are virtually no pedestrians and bikers using that area on rainy or winter days, which is approximately 180 days or half the year according to weather.com. That means 200,000 fewer people will be able to enjoy the lake every year. Is that our real goal? I don't think so. Virtually all the task force lives in the neighborhood south of the lake. There is a direct conflict of interest with the task force's recommendations because each one of them stands to benefit from the closing of the road, whether it's improvement of their neighborhood or the valuations of their houses. Likewise, there's a conflict of interest with any selectman who lives in that neighborhood, and they should recuse themselves from voting on this topic because they likewise stand to benefit from the road being closed down. What you won't hear from the task force is the lake is clean. Vegetation on the lake edge near Whale Rock has regenerated since the task force study a few years ago, whenever that came out. okay? And there are just as many trees falling into the lake on the other side of the lake as there are on the roadside. That's what happens in nature. There are also weeds in every lake around the Berkshires. Doesn't mean it's unhealthy, all right? The bottom line is repaving the road is in the best interest of the lake because it will cap the asphalt and prevent it from moving into the lake. That is what the superintendent of the DPW has repeatedly told you. That's why it's in our best interest. And it doesn't matter if we repave the road now. It doesn't matter in 3 years if we close it and rip up that pavement, whether it's been repaved or the existing pavement, it's still the same job.
Your time.
In closing, this decision to close the road should be made by the voters of this town, and an article will appear on the warrant in next year's town meeting, so we can let the voters decide. I'm asking you to keep the road open until the voters have their say. Thank you.
Hello, Ron Banks. I live on Hollenbeck Avenue. I want to start out by saying that I feel like the streets and the roads in the town are well kept, well paved, and well plowed. I know that plowing job, that's a 2 a.m. job, and that's tough. A lot of the roads are really smooth. They've been made smooth lately. Main Street, Bridge Street, Taconic, even Grove. Taconic was made so smooth a few years ago that there were email wars and arguments to get a speed trap there for a long time. Now there's one of these great automatic speed traps. And what I want to talk to you about tonight is about not repaving Lake Mansfield Road, because repaving it will make it smooth. And smooth brings speed, and speed kills. There will be an accident there. It's dangerous now. It'll be more dangerous when more people drive faster on that smooth road. The state's told us it's not wide enough for 2 lanes. And beyond where the 2 lanes should be, there's a lake. All these other smooth roads in our great town, they have sidewalks, they have curbs, they have guardrails, they have lawns, they have houses, they have trees, they have forests, they have hills. Lake Mansfield Road, beyond its 1.5 lane width, has a lake. And a vehicle will wind up in the lake, it might be upside down, and there will be 1 or more people belted into it. And you don't have to be an EMT or a firefighter to know what happens. And so whether you're into raising taxes or lowering taxes or keeping the road open or shutting it down or paving or not paving, I think we can all agree that we don't want to be at the ER, visiting a friend or a relative or reading about someone who had an accident in the paper. So if an old timer was here, they'd speak up and say, that road's got nature's speed bumps on it right now. And if you make it smooth, it's going to be fast. We're going to need, I looked it up today, you can get one of those portable radar units with a digital, that's about $6,000 plus installation. You can get a series of speed humps that's $1,600 plus installation. I don't know how much a guardrail costs, and I don't know how much a police officer and a cruiser and a radar costs by the hour, but once you start paving that road, it's going to become faster, smoother, more dangerous, and then everyone's going to want protection to keep people and cars out of the water. Okay? I walk there a lot. I walk there several days a week. I have confrontation with vehicles. If you drive there and you see me, you know I wave and I say hello, because I feel like saying hello and making eye contact with a driver is the best way to calm them down. But a lot of people don't play that game. And it's not old, it's not young, it's not trucks, it's not cars, it's not old vehicles, it's not new vehicles. Half the people respect it and drive carefully, and half the people don't. So I urge you guys and ladies not to repave the road, not to make it smoother, not to make it faster, and not to make it more dangerous. Thank you.
Gina James, 69 Sumner Street. Gina James, 69 Sumner Street. I'd like to echo what Ron said and many others have said, but particularly following Ron. I walk there several days a week, not every single day as some people do, but it's becoming actually increasingly more unpleasant and difficult because people are going so fast now. I find I want to wear a white shirt or something bright and wave a hat. It's not on my head, so that I'll be seen. It's becoming very, very difficult to walk there. And the idea of repaving it and having it smooth is really, seems to me, extremely dangerous. It also is going to prolong the controversy, prolong a fight of something that is already was settled. So I think it takes us backward, not forward. And I think, as someone who loves the lake, that it would be a terrible mistake. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Katie Kilmer from Dehan Road. We've been here before. I don't speak well, but my actions are much better. I think we should keep it open for emergency vehicles. And we don't need a paved road. Just patch it, keep it 2 ways the way it is. My husband is sick, and I'm up there in age now. And the people do go fast on that road, but the people that are walking on the road do not move over either. And the bicyclers, they don't move either. And the only thing I can say is please keep that road open. Do not close it. Thank you.
David Anderson, 7 Dehan Road. More basic thing, I walk that road every day with my dog every morning. And I think even if it's closed, it should be repaved, because I feel it's dangerous even to walk on or even to ride a bike. I mean, you get a big enough crack in the road, it can suck a bike tire right in and flip somebody. I'm a cyclist, and I know that's happened to people. And I walk early in the morning, and it's dark, and I've almost fallen before myself, twist an ankle, break a leg. So even if it's closed, I think it should be made safer by paving it. I mean, I would like to be able to see it open to emergency vehicles, so people like Katie can get her, can get an ambulance to her house. She's my neighbor, if need be. And it's just, it just seems to make sense to me, to even if it's going to be 3 years from now before the work gets done, you're going to want to be able to walk down it, ride your bike down it, enjoy it, and not get hurt doing so. And then if you just have a path that's not paved, I mean, you're going to have some provisions, because paths in the wintertime get icy, they get dangerous. I mean, if you can continue to get it paved or plowed, or at least a section of it plowed for pedestrians, I think that would be good. So I'd like to see it get paved and kept open for at least emergency vehicles.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Berliner. I live at 87 Division Street, right where Van Dusenville comes and intersects with Division. So I live on the Mini Mass Pike. Everybody in this town loves to use Division Street because of the convenience. We also live in a modern world. Thank goodness Division Street is closed so that they can fix the bridge so that we don't have the danger of someone being injured or killed. We have this beautiful road along Lake Mansfield. Lake Mansfield is part of the town of Great Barrington. I don't live on the hill. I don't live up there where I can walk, but I certainly like to drive around that in the fall and see the beautiful foliage and enjoy the lake. And I don't think that it's fair for that to be permanently closed to the benefit of part of the town and not everyone. This is an asset for our town. We live in a modern world, and all of the roads in this town need to be maintained and taken care of so that we can have the value of our entire town go up. Thank you.
Okay, Okay, so I'm gonna read one letter that came in, an email that came in, and then the board will have discussion and we'll vote. This is from Brandy Nelson. Good afternoon, Steve, Kate, Lee, Ed, and Bill. A work commitment will keep me from attending tomorrow night's select board meeting. However, I'd like to pass along my comments pertaining to the road closure on Lake Mansfield Road. Although I did not vote that the road ultimately be closed, the majority of task force members did, and I now believe that closure should occur consistent with the recommendation of the task force at our September 10th meeting and subsequently provided to the select board. Investing additional town funds to put a pavement patch on the road will, 1, use scarce funds for a very short-term fix, 2, delay the establishment of new traffic patterns in Lake Mansfield area, 3, continue the environmental degradation of the lake and its shoreline through the addition of asphalt along the lake edge and the continued application of sand and salt along the roadway. I am aware of the town staff letter supporting continued paving of Lake Mansfield Road. It is disappointing staff did not raise these concerns at the task force meeting to allow a robust discussion. Let's not waste funds on a patch. Those funds would be better spent towards design of the long-term solution or improving other roads in Housatonic and Great Barrington. Please follow the Lake Mansfield Task Force recommendation to proceed with the road closure and maintain that closure until a permanent solution is installed. This course of action is the best for the health of the lake. Thank you for your consideration and for your ongoing efforts on behalf of the town, Brandon. So, board, some questions, comments?
I have.
Yes, go ahead.
A question probably for Sean. If the road is repaved, does that mean we would not have to salt and sand it during the winter? Would that eliminate salting and sanding?
Sean Van Dusen, Public Works Director. No, if the road's repaved, we'll still have to use salt in order to if the road's left open, in order to keep the ice from building up. But we'd use far less than we are right now because there'd be a crown on the road. So a little bit of salt will go a lot further than what we've been doing historically, which is using large quantities of salt to prevent icing because of the potholes.
Wait, while you're up there.
Yes,
Yeah, there seems to be a difference of opinion on what is healthier for the lake, whether it's, by asphalting it would cap it and keep asphalt out of the lake, or you're putting more asphalt on the lake.
What I'd like to say is that the worst thing possible is to continue the current course of action, which is to plow pieces of the road in the lake in the winter because the asphalt's so loose, to dump 20 tons of asphalt patch into it, which inevitably ends up in the lake, and then to nuke it with salt. So whatever you do here will be a better choice than what we have now. But it's my opinion that if you're gonna keep having people, if you're gonna keep using it, you absolutely have to pave it. We can't use having more winter maintenance in the condition it's in. So that's number one. But if we're gonna continue to have people walk on it and use it, we need to seal it in. That road is gonna continue to erode into the lake regardless of what we do in the next 5 years. It's my opinion that an asphalt patch and stick will help slow some of the erosion. But certainly there is legitimacy to say if there's less traffic, then there'll be less erosion. So it's pretty complicated. I also wanted to comment about the timeline in which we think the pavement would last. It's very hard to predict in terms of environmental factors and water, but it could be 3 years, it could be 5 years, it's just really hard to know.
And it could be 7, which is what the engineer said.
Okay. It's our discussion. Okay, other questions?
I just, I feel strongly that we should go with the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force recommendation of closing it on November 15th. There's a few concerns I have. One, I keep coming back to the master plan, and in the master plan it talks about beauty being Great Barrington's money crop. So, and when I talk about beauty being Great Barrington's money crop, when I think about that, I think that we have a unique opportunity of protecting an ecosystem, this very, very delicate ecosystem in the heart of Great Barrington. And I don't see it as a lake for the hill. I see it as a community lake. And I think it's this opportunity that we can bring people closer to nature, have opportunities for education, for outdoor education, have a place that seniors can come to and feel that they have a place to look out in the lake and not worry about cars whizzing by. We have an opportunity to bring schools and use the wonderful trails that are adjacent to it. I really feel that we're getting into this drive-by society, and it's very timely with the climate strike on Friday and the climate summit today. We really need to slow down and just think about the long-term picture, the big picture of where we will be, what's this generation giving to the next generation. And I really think that this is such a treasure, and its ability to attract families. I know I've said this before, but 10 years ago, this summer, I moved here with 3 kids from Ireland, and I can absolutely say that Lake Mansfield was one of the reasons why we did. It was one of these things, having a haven. And, but I do recall, and I still do as I walk, down Lake Mansfield, just, feeling unsafe and always wondering, am I gonna get knocked in the leg? Just looking behind me, wondering if my kids are be okay. And I just would think that having a haven in the heart of Great Barrington, connecting Main Street, is such an opportunity to grow this town, to attract families, to really, protect a vital ecosystem. And I just think we have to look at the big picture. We can't kind of fall into this drive-by society saying, I'll just drive by and I'll look at the lake and take it in. That's dangerous, first of all. Also, if we pave it, as Ron Banks said, it's just going to increase the speed. I would be more worried that we would have an accident. And I just, I really think about the money should not be wasted on the, $50,000 shouldn't be wasted on something that we really are taking such a big step in protecting a gem like this. And I think it could be used for design work, it could be used for community outreach, it could be used for signage. And I just really urge the board to continue with the decision that we made before and to close the lake and to listen to the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force. I really think we need to listen and think about the big picture and not be a drive-by society and really create a gem for the whole community. And we can't keep going with this divisive conversation of it's the Hill Lake or it's this lake. It's a community lake. And it's up to the town to make it a community lake and to increase the accessibility to everyone. So the parking lot will be easier. We'll have more ADA accessible parking. I really think it's an opportunity. It's a once-off opportunity to give something to our generation. And I really think we'd be doing a disservice to the next generation if we keep it open and we pave it now. So I really, really urge the select board to go with our vote from last time and follow the recommendation of the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force.
So, we're not reconsidering whether to close the road ultimately and make that lake a wonderful park that we can leave to future generations. That's not on the table. We've made that decision. This is about whether we close it now, whether we pave it now. So the discussions about drive-by community, we all agree on that. We all want this to be a lake in the future. So the question is, if we just close the road now and it snows and people walk on it, we're going to have broken ankles. If we patch the potholes that are there, that's going to go into the lake. We have practical decisions to make, and it isn't about the big picture about whether we save this lake or not, because we're planning to do that. It's the nuts and bolts of how is the best way to do it.
Are you saying open it, keep it open, and pave it, or close it?
I'm not saying either at this point. There seems to be a difference of opinion about what's better for the lake, whether it's to patch it or not to patch it. One option is we could pave it if that's best for the lake and also close it. So we have a road that people can walk and bicycle on. We're not changing our minds. What we have never said is when. So we talked about closing the road and turning it into a park. We didn't say let's do that now. We don't have a plan yet to turn it into a park. We don't have funding to turn it into a park. The shovel in the ground is at least 3 years away. Does the road need to be closed now is what we're discussing.
But if we're protecting the lake,
right, well, that's the question.
That's the heart of the question, and increasing traffic.
Right. But the question becomes, is by patching the road and plowing asphalt patch into the lake, is that really protecting the lake? I'm supporting the select board on closing the road, not how I voted, but that's a select board decision and I'm supporting that. It's just the question is, and we're hearing, Ed's correct, we're hearing two sides and it's up to us to make a decision. What's best for the lake and what's best for the residents. And the condition that it's in right now doesn't seem to be the best condition.
May I make it would be a completely different recommendation. Although it was a recommendation, it was kind of the second choice of the task force when they came to us. I have the memo from June 18th, although I know that they didn't come to our meeting that night. But their second choice was to turn it into a one-way. I'm wondering if that is a happy, not happy, but a somewhere in between place to be in the meantime. We're showing, repaving it and turning it one way, which means that there would still be traffic on the road, but it would not be as much traffic, that there would be more room and safer room for pedestrians, that we would be putting a solid cap on the road that would prevent additional, over salting, but also keeping the road from continuing to fall into the lake. I'm just wondering if that is an option, as it was the second choice, if that's an option in the meantime, in the in-between time, and it does show that the town is moving in the direction of what the task force had recommended to us.
If you move that, I'd second it.
I have an alternate thought. It's similar to what you have in mind.
Okay.
But I personally think we should close the road only because traffic on the road is going to deteriorate the road surface, whether it's paved or not. There's going to be more salt and sand, whether it gets paved or not. Maybe not as much, but we don't want salt and sand going into the lake anymore. What is the possibility of paving perhaps a 6-foot path and closing the road so that pedestrians and bicycles can use it in the summer? But we still have the road closed, so there's not all that traffic constantly breaking down the road surface.
For the Sean question.
Sean?
So the question was, what's the possibility of paving a 6-foot lane?
Just something for cyclists and walkers to use.
I mean, anything's possible.
I guess in that, when we say we're leaving the road open for emergencies, what does that look like?
I just want to follow up, just back up.
Yeah.
I can't do winter maintenance in the current condition without paving the entire thing. So even a 6-foot patch, my plows can't go in there anymore.
I'm
So
suggesting,
I just want to back up to make sure people understand that.
yeah, I'm suggesting that would just help in the summer. And if you don't plow it in the winter, it's a field with snow.
Yeah, anything's possible.
But maybe I'm getting lost. I feel like we said that no matter what, it was gonna be open for emergency use. Am I wrong? No, okay, I'm wrong, great. That's what I wanna know.
So I think it's part of my difficulty is following at this speed what's happening in the evolution from the Lake Mansfield Task Force and the Select Board so that I can get a clear understanding what my staff needs to do and how we're going to adapt to decisions that are made here. Stuff's happened very quickly, and it's great, and a lot of respect to the task force for the work they've done. But there's ramifications for closing, including I have to plow to some point. There will be a Jersey barrier, which will create a giant mountain of snow that my guys will have to go and clean up every single storm to make sure that the barriers are visible so no one crashes into them. So there's ramifications for all this, and it's happening very quickly. So just understands where I'm coming from.
So Sean, can I ask you a question? Yeah, so if it was closed to traffic, just for pedestrians, you're saying that we should pave it no matter what, we should spend that money?
I wouldn't want to
No,
walk
no,
on it.
okay, so you're saying that no matter what, it should be paved?
No, this is definitely,
If
you know,
it's closed to
something
traffic,
for
let's say, but if it's open for emergency vehicles, but closed to
So
cars?
for emergency vehicles to have access in the winter, it has to be paved, because I have to plow it.
Oh.
So I can't continue to plow it in current conditions.
So, John, let me just ask this question so we're all clear. If in fact we don't pave it, you'll not be able to plow for the winter.
So you guys could instruct me to patch it again, and all that patch will go in the lake. And the continued way it has for the last 4 or 5 years, it's a horrible thing to see in the spring. And it's frustrating for me and my staff to go up there and dump asphalt into that road and then watch it go in the lake repeatedly. So.
I think Christine had some.
No, we're done.
I just want to talk about it, because I just feel like, we're trying to create a habit, and we're actually going, I feel like we're regressing. If, we've already voted on closing it. We didn't set a timeline, which I get. And I know we need to do something before the frost comes. So I just feel that this is a great opportunity to start getting used to the idea of having it closed. And why would we delay it for 2 years, get people, in their head that, oh, this doesn't need to be closed, we can use, we can go fast, and have that uncertainty of what we're doing by having something that's faster, easier to drive in. I mean, what's gonna happen in 3-5 years when there's a different board, and all of a sudden, someone, says, oh, let's not, do this. Maybe it becomes such a easy fix that people, are no longer looking at the big picture. So I just worry that we're creating this habit that it's okay. This is not okay. We're actually trying to save a lake and an ecosystem, and we're trying to change people's habits. So why would we kind of tease them into thinking it's okay and making something faster just for a few years? I really think this is a big step to try to change people's way of thinking and really think about the lake and what it could be. So now we can do outreach about, what it could bring to the community. We can talk about the outdoor education possibilities. I really, really think this is an opportunity, and I just think we need to have some kind of backbone and really just stick to this and follow the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force, because this is a big picture thing. This is, it's not a drive-by sizing. We just need to really think big picture. And I just really, really feel we should close it.
We have 2 times as a select board voted to repave this road. We did it August of last year, and we did it just a few months ago. So I don't think that changing, I'm not saying that we should, because I really don't know what I want to say. But I just think that saying that we're being cowardice or wishy-washy is and not consistent with our message is not necessarily an accurate thing to say. Because as a message, we've said let's pave this road, and we've also said that we agree with the task force up until this one place in which we're both not. Well, we haven't even said we disagree. We just haven't come to the same conclusion yet this evening. So I think that's a bit unfair of a statement to me.
Explain to me where you're coming from.
When the task force came to us last spring with, they were in a certain portion of what they were doing, and while they were in this process of deciding, Sean said to us, we really need to do something about the road because we just keep patching it and it falls into the road. And then I think you came back, I have the minute notes from August 18th or 13th of last year where you came and you said, this is what we should do, this is what it's gonna cost, and we said do it, but there wasn't enough money in the budget to do it. Then a few months ago, after the task force came to us and we decided to close the road, at the next meeting, it was made a recommendation by our staff to actually ask the task force for a recommendation about whether or not to pave the road. But we as a select board went against our staff and voted to pave the road, and then the task force asked that we reconsider that. We reconsidered and sent it to the task force to give us their decision. So I don't think that we as a board, we've been inconsistent all along. So I don't think that's.
So are you thinking, I just want to clarify, are you thinking, I'm not against paving it. I would absolutely go with, I just think we should close it. If we're gonna pave it, we should close it to traffic other than emergency vehicles. So that's why I don't.
The problem is there are 2 variables here. One is, a lot of people are saying we shouldn't pave the road. We don't pave the road, it means we're closing it. But that also means it may not be passable to people during the winter for walking or anything else, because if we have a harsh winter, I don't want to see people come to the podium during Citizen Speak and complain that we're not taking care of the road, we're not plowing it. That's clear that people may not be able to use a road if we don't pave it and we close it. Now, the other variable is paving it. We could pave it and leave the road open, we could pave it and close the road. So there's a lot of moving parts here. And I think people who have spoken have given different messages. And I think, so we have 2 decisions here. One, do we want to pave it? Some people who want to see the health of the lake maintained say, don't pave it, which means A, we close the road, and B, it may not be passable this winter, period, for anybody except snowshoers and cross-country skiers. If it's a really bad winter, maybe icy, it may just have 6, 12, 18 inches of snow on it. So there's a lot of variables.
Point of clarity, as far as emergency vehicles, we have talked with the task force, had conversations with both the fire department and the emergency ambulance service. neither of whom will be using Lake Mansfield Road. They found no problem with us closing the road.
I think the one question I had, Bill, was that whole discussion, correct me if I'm wrong, was using it for transportation from one end of town to the other. My concern has always been if something happens on the road. And that's a concern of mine. But you're right, both the police, the fire department, the ambulance squad said, as far as transporting people,
Right.
they don't need that.
I mean, I think our decision is, do we preserve the road or do we preserve the lake?
A little dramatic, but okay. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to accept the recommendation of the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force to close the lake and,
Close the road.
sorry, excuse me. I make a recommendation to follow the recommendation, I make a motion to follow the recommendation of the Lake Mansfield Improvement Task Force to close Lake Mansfield driveway to all vehicular traffic by November 15th.
Paving?
And not pave it.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Do I have another?
Do you want to make it?
Was that 3-2?
Yes.
3-2.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll make it. I make a motion to repave the road and keep it open to one-way south. Does it matter?
I think that's the recommendation.
The recommendation from south to north traffic.
No, north.
North to south?
No, it's
Right.
It's south to north. I have it right here.
Okay.
South.
Their initial
South to north,
second
yeah.
choice.
In the interim, I guess. Yeah. Starting
November 15th.
November
Whenever you
15th.
allow paving,
Yeah.
Second.
Could the motion be repeated?
You think?
Potentially. I'm not sure. Could you? Sorry, or do I need to?
Here's what I think she said.
Thank you.
She made a motion to repave the road and to mark it and stripe it as one way from south to north.
From the boat launch to the park.
From the boat launch to the parking lot.
That's correct. That was a motion and a second.
As an interim step.
As an interim step, yeah.
The board is not changing, whatever the board votes, it has not said it's going to change its mind about closing the road. That has nothing to do with it. Discussion.
I second. Despite saying it so eloquently, I second.
Thank
So
you.
we have a discussion about
Sure.
that motion?
Yes, discussion.
So, is there a timeline on this? Is this, for 5 years, 6 years? I mean, what are we saying? I don't understand.
Until it's very clear on the executive summary, until the grant money is available to close the road.
To keep it one way?
Until the grant money is available. If that's 18 months, if that's 12 months, even better. If it's 2-3 years, but we're not slowing down the process of getting grant money.
I mean, in my feeling, it's a step in the right direction. It makes it safer for pedestrians, safer for vehicles and drivers, safer, not the safest choice for the lake, but a safer choice for the lake, moving in the right direction. And hopefully with that additional layer of asphalt pavement, that less salt will need to be used, and also with it not having to be used potentially for the width of the entire road, that hopefully it will be a safer decision for the lake.
I just think this sounds very much like the 4-to-1 vote. I just feel like we're regressing, we're going backwards, and I just don't understand where this is coming from. So I'm just very surprised. I'm surprised at the board members, I'm surprised at the staff.
Any other discussion from the board?
Well, there'll still be, if it's one way, there'll still be salt and sand going into the lake, just not quite as much.
I mean, are you guys thinking of the lake?
Please, that's enough. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
3-2.
Yes.
Yes. Citizen speak time. Maybe. You can speak now.
Could you just restate?
Wow.
Oh, hold on. When you go to the mic, I'll be able to do that.
Wow.
This is going to be really quick.
No, he's first.
Wow. That's all I can say is wow. You guys have disregarded this is Steve Freeman from 87 Railroad. You guys have disregarded,
Someone at the microphone is trying to speak.
You've disregarded your staff on that issue. You disregarded the surveys that the task force did. The task force convoluted the information that they gave you, and they showed you, and you just voted on something that you didn't even check with DPW how that would impact going one way and what that means to them in the next 2 weeks or couple weeks. That was talking about what one of the select board members saying, being surprised at the select board members. I am surprised at the select board members that you just made that decision. I'm really disappointed in that. It just kind of blows my mind. And I hope you guys not only revisit that at the next meeting, but that you revisit the fact that whether or not you even want to keep the road closed, which I don't think that you can legally do, and I will be continuing to follow up on this without the town voting on it. So I believe there's precedent. It had to do with the Heritage Trail in 2002, 2008, something like that. And you might be up against it on that.
You can go ahead.
I just wanted you to restate what you decided to do.
So the decision was made, you said it better.
To repave the road and stripe it for one-way from south to north.
From the parking lot to...
No, from the boat launch. One way from the boat launch to the parking lot, and it's two-way again.
Anyone else want to speak?
Yes, Peter Frank, 16 Lakeview. I just want to say that Ms. Davis was quite prescient in terms of the effect that the change of mind that this board has. We see now all of a sudden the people who want to keep the road open celebrating, and I feel like it just totally muddled the situation, and I think that it's snatched defeat from the jaws of victory for you guys.
I appreciate the extremely difficult position that you're in planning for the future. I'm puzzled by the vote for the one-way road, which you didn't vote for before, and which actually will require a great deal of traffic redirection by bringing more traffic into the space and actually closing the road. So I think that our next task, apparently, will be to work very hard with our DPW and our town planner to understand what that means and how to negotiate that safely in the best way for our town. I still have a lot of questions about the necessity of pavement and the width of pavement. And I wasn't able to speak understandably because my time was up. You know, I felt there could be alternatives to a full course of pavement if we close the road and use it for pedestrian and recreational access. And I've been doing some research about other kinds of ways of solving potholes that use recycled tires, and it's not a drivable surface, but it's definitely a walkable, bikeable, safe surface. So I think we could have done some really creative things to create the interim recreational trail there, and that pavement is, I'm certainly disappointed by adding more pavement into that space. On another vein, I also represent Great Barrington Land Conservancy, and we work very hard to work with the town. We have a lot of great events coming up, and I think it's important to know that we as a community are deeply invested in our natural spaces. And when we have the opportunity, we should definitely understand our responsibility to future generations. So if you feel like wanting to learn how to save a tree, near the Searles Building, and you can join us on Saturday for a workshop there at 1:30. We need lots of hands and shovels and wheelbarrows, and that's on the GB Land website. And if you feel like helping the Land Conservancy to do all the work that it does, including the improvements and installation of trails at Lake Mansfield and the beautification of the recreational space, the implementation of pollinator gardens all over Great Barrington, and soon, very soon, the installation of a new riverfront trail to complement Riverwalk, our 30-year-old riverside trail. And I invite you to run for the hills, which will be on October 6th, a walk, a run, or a free kids race, and it happens at Simon's Rock, and that information is also on the GB Land website. This was last year's t-shirt, very handsome. You're welcome to sport this t-shirt. This year we have even more community businesses supporting us, because I think community businesses do understand how absolutely important our environment is, not only to our bottom line, but also to our community sense of health and well-being. Thank you.
Still here, but I'm seeing butterflies all over, maybe because I live next to the library's garden. But they're working. But bees too.
I thank you for the deliberation. It's
Just take your name again.
Dale Abrams, 6 Lake Mansfield Road, member of the task force. The trying to deliberate over the best solution, I think, in this context was not really a good idea, honestly. Far more went into that. And it's not easy. I mean, I think Sean would back me up on this. To jump to the one-way solution isn't a quick and easy thing to implement. You can't simply close it from the boat launch to the beach parking lot. That doesn't work because there's a residence in the middle there and the pool area in the middle there. So that portion back to that house driveway has to be two-way through there. So there's a complex jigsaw puzzle of barricades and signage or gates that would make it be possible. It's actually a more simple solution to do a closure and signage, not a lot simpler. Neither of them's easy. But I think we were jumping and looking for something that sort of met in the middle, and the one-way option isn't really a good middle road, and I'd hope that you would reconsider tonight and consider the option that was put forth by the task force again.
Jenny Clark, Oak Street. I came here with nothing to say, and now I'm so sorry to see the process as it's worked out here. I know that you work so hard, and I'm welcome to our new town manager, and I'm proud of the work we do in general, but this reminds me of being shocked by certain decisions that were made around the water fountains back in January or February, when I didn't know, coming into a meeting, that there was about to be a sizable change in policy. And tonight, I feel that we have gone ahead way too quickly, that we've looked, that we've just brushed aside, we have not worked properly with this volunteer committee that has worked so incredibly hard on this, and that we've just jumped the gun. And I know that you're under pressure with the frost season coming up, but this really feels improper. And I really request that we look at this again, that we make another concerted effort in the next day or two to repair this damage that I think could be done to the town. There are many issues that will come up with this one-way business. So please consider that.
Dave Ryle, Christian Hill Road again. I know this is a really tough thing, and I got to commend you guys for coming up with a compromise on the situation. Doesn't mean that it's not going to be closed down in 3 years or not. The only thing that could have been better on this situation and this decision was, and it might alleviate Dale's concerns about the turnaround, is to make that one way from north to south. if you did that, the signage would be very easy and you wouldn't restrict access to health care for those residents to the north of the lake. Back in April, when the task force was considering all the alternatives, closing it down, two-way, one-way back and forth, I was informed that the reason that they didn't want it going from north to south at that time was because they didn't want people turning around in the newly expanded boat ramp. That was the only reason at that time that the decision was made to go from north, or from south to north. If you went the other way, it wouldn't matter. The folks that live on the pool club and the one resident there would be very easily to be able to access that road. Just something to think about, but you know, that's it, I guess.
Michelle Madere, 70 Division Street, and I appreciate all the discussion that occurred tonight. My emotions were all over the place from the opening of the meeting. First off, we just had an extensive conversation with regard to Lake Mansfield Road, and speed was brought up. And as you are aware, the Division Street Bridge is closed, which has pushed a huge amount of traffic onto North Plain Road, Van Duzenville Road, and 183. I've been up and down Van Duzenville Road. I'm taking my own car, driving around, watching the speed, and it's unbelievable. And what's even sadder is there are young families with children who live on these roads, who don't get the chance to walk the roads or ride their bicycles or anything like that for fear they're going to get killed. And as I've stated before, I myself have been run off of Van Duzenville Road by an SUV with a woman texting on her phone. So it's very dangerous. So when we're talking about speed, I think the select board really needs to look at different ways to calm the speed down. And if that means ticketing people, we're going to need to start ticketing people, because when you talk about a tragedy waiting to happen, it almost happened to me. I could have been killed riding my bicycle. And I have the right to enjoy where I live just as much as anybody on Lake Mansfield Road or any other area. Also, I'd like to just point out one thing that really kind of angered me tonight was there was a huge amount of applause tonight, which I think is wonderful. But September 9th, there was applause as well. And repeated gaveling went on when members of the audience applauded, and we were
respectful. I let that
respectful.
go afterwards, Michelle. First couple times I tried to stop and then I let it go.
But like tonight, it was wide
I was
open.
consistent then as I was tonight.
All right, there were several comments that were made tonight. The impact of every decision. The beauty being Great Barrington's money cropped. To slow down and look at the bigger picture. To attract families. Let's see. And we're discussing an issue up on Van Duzenville where there are young families, several of which live on Van Duzenville Road. So I'm sitting there and I'm listening to this and I'm going, just a couple weeks ago, we were talking about a marijuana cultivation and manufacturing facility disrupting an entire community, my community. Don't I deserve enjoyment of my property just like the people on Lake Mansfield, or who live on Hollenbeck, or who live anywhere up there? And I'm really angry about that. And I said, is there some sort of double standard going on here? And I just got the assessment on my house. My assessment went up. My taxes are going to go up. I'm going to be paying as much taxes as anyone else in this room. But all I ask for is enjoyment of my property. And I do respect the fact that the Fulcrum matter has been continued to October 21st. But let's talk a minute about democracy. You saw it in play here tonight. Well, what democracy has meant to me is tapping my savings account for thousands and thousands of dollars to pay a lawyer to make sure my rights, the enjoyment of my home, a legacy I can leave to my child, is protected. More money has been paid to hire a consultant, along with many group members, just to make sure we can enjoy our home. Democracy has really cost us a lot. And trust me, in my family, it really hurts when I write those big checks to an attorney. That's money we really don't have, and I'm draining my savings to do it. So I really appreciate what the discussion here tonight about Lake Mansfield Road, but remember, there are other neighborhoods, and these are neighborhoods that matter just as much. So, all right. And again, that's another thing, I noticed that many people were given extended time outside of the
what I gave
minutes.
was Christine. I gave her a minute for every year she's been on the task force.
That should have been announced.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Select Board, I do commend you for
Your name for this.
sorry, Trevor Forbes, 325 North Plain Road. I commend you for taking the decision, which I hope is your decision, to extend the second part of the public hearing for the Fulcrum project, hopefully to allow for reasoned debate and discussion with full knowledge of the studies that are being carried out, both by yourselves, as I understand it, but also some of the information that we've managed to glean as well. Again, following up on Michelle's point about our personal involvement in this, my wife and I did actually go to both Colorado and California on a fact-finding mission. We did go to places like Strong Agronomy, where Fulcrum, or NCM rather, claim that they have a odor mitigation process in place. What we did notice, and you'll be interested to know that, is that the environment in that sort of location is completely different to the environment that you're proposing to put this large grow and manufacturing factory in Housatonic. It is a very large agricultural area. The marijuana growing is way back from the road. You can't even see it from the front of the frontage of Strong Agronomy. You still get a smell of marijuana. I'll be quite happy to put this as an exhibit of exactly where we went. So if I can put that for the record, I should be interested in that.
Could you, the best thing,
That's what.
the best thing for you to do is hold that for the public hearings, because this won't go in as part of the exhibit.
Okay, well that's fine. But the point is that I'm making, and I also had a discussion with a contact in the Emerald Triangle of California. He's an environmentalist. He's been living in a pot growing area for many years and knows what has happened when big business has actually come into that area. And what he's found, it's actually diminished the environmental issue. It's caused a lot of erosion, it's caused a lot of water degradation as well. I'm quite happy to share that with people on the board too. So I do commend you for delaying decision on this particular project. I did notice that Mr. Abrams in the Berkshire Eagle today actually did seem to equate the odor issue with ancient humans who had body odor. Well, I think that's a very strange comment to make in the public process. If you go down to these areas, the odor is really quite strong. So I would urge you to listen to the people who vote you into your positions, and for you to basically uphold our rights as citizens and to look after the health and welfare of all of us. Thank you.
I just want to say one thing, since you took what I said entirely out of context. So, and you also talked about us proposing to allow this there. So just so you know, a company has come to us filing an application to do something that they are legally entitled to do. The neighbors have raised concerns, very legitimate concerns, to this board. This board, as a board and as individuals, have yet to open our mouths. We've hired experts to look into it. So the neighbors don't want The neighbors are concerned about odor, light, noise, and water use. The company that's applying is saying you don't have to worry about odor, light, noise, and water use. We've hired experts to try and evaluate that. That's all that's happened so far. So we hear everything you're saying, but it isn't you against us. At this point, we are listening. The company has said to do something, and you're saying you have these concerns, which is what you're supposed to be saying, and we're listening, which is what we're supposed to be doing.
Good. Doug Stevenson, 351 North Plain Road, Houstonic. It's good to hear you say that, Mr. Abrams, because the way it's supposed to work is we're supposed to raise concerns, and you're supposed to be representing us. So you're supposed to be on our team. Just to make that clear. I invite the board to spend the next couple of weeks going down to Sheffield, driving down Kellogg Road, and driving down Bow Wow Road to visit the couple of marijuana grow operations that exist in the area, and let your own nose do the investigation for you. And you can tell us what you think with these large grow operations, these large commercial grow operations, as to whether or not you smell the skunk out, the dead skunk odor, or if you think we're crazy, because I don't think we're crazy, but you can tell us. But don't wait until after that October 21st meeting, because by October 21st, it's going to be done blooming. And I don't think they picked October 21st just out of the air. I think that was picked intentionally. So.
Just for your sake, it was picked by us, not by them.
Okay.
If you want to come to the 7th meeting, there's 3 special permits.
Pardon?
There are 3 special permits on the 7th. To add a 4th, we didn't think was a good
Well,
idea.
maybe I will come to that meeting.
I love having you there, so it's good.
Well, good. Thank you.
So Maureen Quigley, High Street.
Yeah, just give your name and speak as loud as you can.
As loud as I can. Maureen Quigley, 9 High Street. Can you hear me now? Okay. So I just wanted to follow up. You had mentioned, Mr. Abrams, about having a water expert. So can you share with us who the water expert is that you're using versus having the DEP oversee environmental issues around the water quantity and quality?
Do you want me to answer that?
This is really not the time for questions. I appreciate that. There is not a water expert. There's a decision that there was an executive summary which will make public by town manager. We haven't voted on it yet, so
Okay.
come to our next couple meetings.
Okay, so just for clarification, the town has not hired a water expert,
That's
correct?
right.
And the town has not been in communication with DEP over state water regulations?
We've reviewed publicly available information from the DPU and DEP.
No, but my question to you was, has there been any direct communication with the DEP in regards to the Fulcum project and the concern regarding water? No? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Susan Lord, 203 Highland Street in Housatonic. I mostly have questions. The first one is about Lake Mansfield. Is there going to be a place for people who don't live in that area to park, to use? I didn't hear anybody address that exactly. I think you mentioned there will be a new parking lot.
There's a parking lot there.
Okay, so
that'll still be.
Second is, I'm wondering if you could tell us what to expect at the next meeting as far as procedures go. I'm really.
You're talking about the Fulcrum meeting,
Yes,
which is not our next meeting. It's
the 20.
it's the one after.
Yes, okay. I
So-
just want to
so-
know what to expect
Yeah, I
as
think
far
that-
as dialogue back and forth.
Okay, so there will be no dialogue back and forth, but what will happen is our experts that we have on sound and odor will give their report. The board, who has been silent so far, will ask questions. And then the public will have a chance to speak about the reports that were given and not to repeat themselves on other issues. And then possibly the board may vote that night and may choose not to.
So there will be a chance for us to introduce evidence.
Sure, on those two issues,
On the issues of.
on sound and odor.
And nothing else, exactly.
The hearing is still open.
Yes, thank you for reminding me of
So
that.
yeah.
So if it's not a repetition of what's been said previously, you'll be allowed to say.
Okay, wonderful. And then my last question has to do with enforcement. When I read the agreement, it sounds like if there's a nuisance, if any of these issues are not resolved, that we can file a complaint. But I didn't see anything in the agreement that gave us the power to shut them down if they don't do what they say they're going to do. Is that a correct
I don't know
understanding?
what agreement you're looking at. We don't have an agreement.
But I haven't really,
We haven't gotten that far yet.
okay, so that's something
Yeah.
that would be considered, what we would do in the case they could not live up to their commitments. Great, thank you.
Yeah, just, so Chris has just made the point, just so everyone knows, whatever is said tonight is not part of the public hearing. So, just so everyone's clear on it.
I just have a quick question. I basically, Denise Forbes, 325 North Plain Road.
Just speak loud like you did the other night. That's
You don't
not
need the
working well.
microphone, that's fine, I can speak loud. Just a quick question. A while ago, I sent you all a report from Acton, Maine. It was basically their version of what they've done to deal with the situation of incoming marijuana grows and retail shops and everything else. They did a lot of comprehensive studies, documented it all, and it was a really great report, a guideline on how to deal with this type of new business coming in. So I know I've sent it to all of you, but I don't think anyone read it. So I was just wondering if you could find it in your email and have a quick read, because in our studies over at California and Colorado, we've learned a lot, and I spoke to the people in Bend, Oregon, and I learned a lot about people in Oregon, some of the Fulcrum people, which I think you probably know. I don't want to talk about it now, but basically, Oregon has their rules, and they basically do not allow the marijuana grow people control them. They control the people. And they set their guidelines and rules, and they have strict rules that they have to adhere to. And they're all in areas that are in commercial sites away from people. They have to have 20 acres of land, and each site has to be in the middle somewhere strategically so that it doesn't affect the outlying communities and the people. So anyway, just quick little note, thank you very much.
Select one, please.
I'm just coming back to the Lake Mansfield. I'm just concerned about what's going to be involved from the DPW to really delineate the one way, and I'm just concerned that there's no plan. I just feel like that was done in haste. So I'm just, I just wish there was a way to step back and really look at that decision, because I don't feel that it was well thought out, in my opinion. So I just wonder how that's going to really pan out. So.
Do you want to come? Yeah, so I'm going to call the traffic engineer tomorrow to see how fast we can come up with a plan. And then if it's probably the best course of action.
So can I ask you a question?
Of course.
If there's one way, and there's, let's say, they're going to be paving, and so I assume people are going to be going faster because it's smoother, and then you have people walking alongside the lake. I just worry, is there going to be a barrier between the people that are walking and the people that are speeding by, or is there just going to be a line, or I just worry about.
Line painting can be discussed, but I'm going to get a traffic engineer to come in and just come up with a plan.
For me, I feel it's going to be a more dangerous situation, and I just really, really shudder to think of what could happen. So I just don't think it was a very wise decision.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah, just a quick thank you to everyone who spoke about the Lake Mansfield thing. You seem to acknowledge there was no perfect. you know, a few thanked us for deliberating. I understand a lot of people weren't happy with the answer, and I assume if there is an insurmountable problem with the one-way, we will find out from Sean very quickly.
Media time. Elaine?
Just a reminder, would you put on your next agenda, making the website the official posting?
Yeah, we haven't forgotten. It's on our list. We unfortunately haven't put on.
No.
Move it up the list. Okay, the request is to move it up the list. That's fine. Anyone else? Oh, no, this is for media time. We're done. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?